Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to episode 42 of the Prosperous Yogini podcast. And I'm super excited today because it's an interview episode, and I've got my lovely friend Natalie from Live Love Yoga with me today, and we're going to talk about that evolution of being a trainer. So this podcast is for everyone, but particularly if you're an experienced yoga teacher, maybe been teaching for 7-8 years plus, and you started to think about creating or offering a training course. How might you go about that? Why might you go about it? Natalie and I are here today to share all our experience of being a trainer. But before we get going, Natalie, I think we should talk about our relationship. I like how we met. It sounds like our relationship, like how we met, and how we support each other. So, yeah, how did we meet? You were teaching in Cornwall, weren't you? And I got pregnant.
Yeah. And I think I'm not sure how you found me. I think you just contacted me to cover your classes when you were having your baby.
Yeah.
Matthew.
Yeah, that was it. My first child, I did that brilliant thing where I set up a yoga studio and got pregnant. Yeah, and I was like, obviously I wanted to keep this studio going, and I was on maternity leave. Yeah, and I don't know, Natalie. I just think the universe sometimes attracts you to the people you need. And I think I just messaged you. I didn't know you and said, "Hey, do you want to come and cover my classes?"
Mm,
And yeah, you kept my studio going for about 4 months. You did everything, didn't
yeah.
you? Pregnancy, mum and baby, vinyasa. Yeah, and then you moved away from Cornwall, but we stayed in contact, didn't we? And I think like
Mhm.
really it was COVID probably that brought us closer together because we were both offering training courses, weren't we, in person? And I think I remembered messaging you or something like, "What the hell?" I think it might have been something slightly different, but what are we going to do and how are we going to navigate this? Because at the time, both of us were running teacher training courses. And I think our relationship is, I talk about this when like you're reaching out to work with other yoga teachers and sometimes you get a bit of that sort of like standoffish response. Like we've never been like that, have we? We've always been able to be like
No.
really honest. And I think that I hope our relationship is an example to everyone within the industry that, working together collaboratively and supporting each other to both thrive is how we can grow this business, which is majority women. And we can support each other, moving away from that scarcity competition. Because we're able to message or ring each other or email each other and say, help, this isn't working. What do you think? That happens a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, we're not in competition in that we're not in the same location, but we have both got like online courses,
Yeah.
um, which in theory are in competition, but it doesn't feel like that, and
No.
I don't think it ever really should anyway, because there's always the right students for the right teachers.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if someone doesn't come to you, they go to a different teacher. It's because it's not the right match.
Yeah.
And doesn't necessarily have to feel like competition as
No.
such.
No, we understand that. I mean, like we both do have a mentoring program. I think
Yeah,
there's a mutual
yeah, yeah.
respect because I know I've got a mentoring program, you've got a mentoring program. So for me, I'm not like gonna send you that email saying, "Hey, will you tell all your trainees about my mentoring program?" I understand that, that's something that ain't gonna work for you and vice versa. But at the same
Mm.
time, if any of my trainees go to you for your mentoring program or vice versa, we're totally cool.
Mm.
It's the ego. We've mastered our ego, Natalie.
Kind of.
Yeah. On this front, we've mastered the ego. So Natalie is a really experienced trainer. Natalie, how long have you been running teacher training courses? Can you remember?
I think this is my 6th year.
Yeah. So
I
wow.
think 5 or
Yeah.
6 years.
Yeah, you definitely led the way. I think you started before me.
Yeah.
And I remember you were really helpful, particularly when I set up my foundation teacher training course, which is such a big undertaking. You were really supportive
Mm.
with that. So yeah, thank you. I'm saying on camera now, thank you for that. So yeah, experienced trainer. And at the point now, Natalie, your whole your yoga business is offering training in one way or another. Is that right?
Predominantly, yeah, at the moment. I've got one online class,
Hmm.
um, and possibly another one, maybe another one starting at some point in the community. But I don't know, not yet. But I'm quite happy at the moment just doing training courses, online training courses, mentoring. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can cast your mind back to 6-7 years ago and where you were then in your teaching career, what was it that like led you to that point where you're like, I'm going to start running teacher training? Can you remember?
Yeah, people ask me this a bit actually. And when I went on my teacher training course, I remember thinking to myself, this is a good business model. And the course that I did, they just ran teacher training courses. And so it wasn't like, like us, like kind of more teachers who then offer a training course and it evolves like that. Yeah, and so I thought at some point that's what I want to do. It was a bit of a goal from the moment I started, teaching, really. But I knew it wasn't something I was going to do straight away. Yeah.
And so obviously your higher self noticed that this would be a good business model. And I think you are right. Like I talk a lot with my mentorship program, like what's this pathway to profit? And you and I know there's an absolute ceiling on the amount of classes, whether you're teaching in person or online, that you can go out and teach. And then I think we go, well, how can I scale my business? How can I, grow my income and help people through yoga? And there are so many ways to do this. And one of them is to offer a higher ticket offer. And the bottom line is teacher training, because of the value you bring, is a higher ticket offer. But it's also, if you're 2-3 years out of your graduation as a yoga teacher, you're not ready to do that. You do need to really go out and cut your craft. I think we were chatting before I hit record. I think this is worth speaking about. You and I both, yoga teachers forget this all the time. Their previous life before they were yoga teacher, you and I have an educational background. So where before you were a yoga teacher, what link, what was your experience in terms of working in an educational setting?
Actually, I trained as a yoga teacher and then I did a PGCE.
Oh, I didn't know
like
that.
the following year. Yeah. Partly because it was always something I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to teach. And one of the reasons was I had this idea of running teacher training courses, and I knew that having a PGCE and experience in teaching would be helpful. So I know you did yours in secondary school.
Yes.
Yeah, so I did a PGCE at college and worked in further education. So I taught teenagers and young adults, but I also taught adults kind of in the community as well. Various things from art to pattern cutting and textiles to
I didn't know
gardening.
This,
and we did like kind of key skills and I think bits of cooking. Like it was a really lovely department in the college that kind of offered everything and anything within like various community groups and evening classes, and then teenagers, young people as well. So I kind of was thrown into the deep end with that of like, here's a course, do you want to teach it? Like, here's a class, and you just learn to kind of adapt and take the skill of teaching and then adapt that to the subjects that you've got. So I did that alongside teaching for, I can't remember, a few years. And then when I moved from Cornwall, I carried on for a little bit. And then I did some tutoring, and then and then I went into the route of running some training courses. But I started small. So I started with my teen yoga training.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Natalie. Just before we go on to that point, there's an alternative reason why I've got you on my podcast, because I know you and I share so many similar opinions, and I am forever saying teaching is teaching. That yoga teachers get themselves so tied up into, I'm a yoga teacher, and like this idea of it being perfect. I'm like, listen, you're actually just going out, without belittling yoga and what you're doing, just going out to teach a yoga class. Like, it's going to be okay, you know, because we can build up so much fear about it. And they're like, well, I'm not ready. And I'm like, you need to go out and teach. By the way, teaching's a skill. Teaching is teaching regardless of subject. And when we come from that other educational background, where whether you're in secondary, further ed, adult ed, primary, so often in that environment, don't you just get chucked in and you're like, teach this today, and to some extent there's a bit of winging it, you know, but it really helps us as yoga teachers. I know for a fact that we just like, you know, we turn up and you're like, my lesson plan is just not going to work today, I'm going to set light to that, and there's not a sense of panic because you're like, you've been in that place before. And teaching is teaching, and we get so tied up into it being super special because it's yoga teaching, and like it is super special, but ultimately the skill of teaching is teaching. So I've got you on here just to basically reinforce my beliefs. To say it's not just me that talks about this stuff, right?
Yeah, but I think it's true, and especially if you're going to run courses, then you're teaching even more, and so it's.
And as a trainer, you're teaching people teaching methodology. And we'll talk about this in a bit, but I think that is one of, actually, let's talk about it now. We were talking about this before we hit record, that so many, there's lots of, you're an experienced yoga teacher, but if you haven't got that educational background, if you haven't had that experience of training others, but you have that calling to run a training course, yes, you've got your knowledge of yoga, right? But that is very separate from actually putting it together into a curriculum and teaching methodology. And what was that course you recommended?
Petals, so preparing to teach in the lifelong learning sector.
Ooh.
So obviously if you're teaching yoga, running a yoga teacher training, you're teaching adults. So the lifelong learning sector is adult education basically. And I think I don't know if they still run it. Like it might have a different name
know what?
now.
I'll Google it, and if it still exists, I'll put it in the show notes. But there'll be something. There will be other courses that help.
There'll be something similar, but
Yeah.
so I can't. It might have a different name now. It might not. But when I was doing my PGCE, it was something like, I don't know, 10 weeks or 12 weeks or something like that, and an evening course, I think. And a lot of the colleges, if you were even wanted to teach a yoga class as an evening class, a lot of the places required you to have a petals as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's a useful skill.
Yeah, I think if you're thinking, I'm a yoga teacher and I'm considering being a trainer, I think you've now got to think, this is a new skill, a new role. How do I become a trainer? How do I then, as a trainer, teach other people to be a yoga teacher? It's a bit like that evolution from, when you teach a trainer, you're going from someone who's practicing yoga to someone who teaches others to practice yoga. And there's a shift in there, and there's almost like there's a shift again from, I'm a yoga teacher, how do I then go from that place from yoga teacher to trainer? And I do think that, and it isn't, let's be honest, we talk about this a lot, it is an unregulated industry, yoga, which comes with some challenges, which you and I sometimes have little quiet rants about, but we both try to remain positive, don't we? I'm like, unregulation is basically freedom and it writes itself. But I think some of the challenges is because it is so unregulated. You and I both see this. We pick up people who've started on a training course that for whatever reason was rubbish, and you feel for them, don't you? Because there's a lot of money involved sometimes, and there's a whole multitude of reasons why the course wasn't right for them. But sometimes it is that there is no industry standard in terms of training. So part of my message in this podcast, guys, if you're thinking of being a trainer, take Natalie's advice. We'll look into that petals course, but consider, what that skill of a trainer is and how you can, get those skills in order to deliver a yoga teacher training course. Because I'm sure the majority of trainers want to deliver a good course. Like, it's pretty hard work. So on that, it is quite hard work setting up a course. Your evolution, very similar to mine. So let's go down your route. You didn't start foundation teacher training, 300 hour, 200 hours. You started with, what did you start with, sweetheart?
So I started with the teen yoga training. And before that, I think I was running weekly classes, and then I was doing workshops. So I didn't obviously jump from just doing a weekly classes to a teacher training.
Mm.
I ran workshops, like full day kind of
Mhm.
um
Were they
for
CPD,
students.
like
No,
CPD? No, I'm asking you to remember now, many years ago.
I I've been a couple of CPD workshops actually.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so that was for students just to deepen their own yoga
yeah.
practice. And I think there were a few short CPD workshops, and
Mm.
then I ran the teen yoga teacher training,
Mm.
which was 4 days.
Yes.
Um, and I did that consciously to kind of not test the water with with the market, but to test the water for myself, to kind of
Yeah.
prepare me for the process of writing a course, writing a manual, getting all the material together, and feeling confident
Yeah.
running that. Um, and then I ran the teacher training.
Hmm.
I think the following year or the year after, I can't remember off the
Do you
top of
know
my
what,
head.
Natalie? I'm glad you like this, because I'm like, I realized the other day, like I've been saying, oh, I've been teaching for, I think I was like 10 years. And then the other day I was like, oh my God, it's 14 years. I had to go through my
Mm,
website and update it. And then I'm like, oh, I've been doing this, I'm getting old. And then our memory are like, what did we do when I started out? But what I loved about that just then is you can hear Natalie had a process. It wasn't like
mm,
I'm going from classes to running a full-blown foundation teacher training course, because that would cause a lot of stress for someone. You can do it, but it would cause a lot of stress. And it's a bit like, I use this analogy all the time. Let's say I rock up, I'm new to yoga, and my goal is headstand. Well, there's a process, isn't it? You're
mm.
unlikely to be up into headstand day one, as a beginner yogi. And it's the same here. And there was a process that Natalie was learning. Basically, if you don't go, you don't know. You have to go out and see. I'll do something that's shorter. I'll see how it's delivered. I'll refine it. And then even with our training courses, like, they're never static, are they? Like, mine are like online, like quite self-paced, but they're never static. I'm always going in and updating them, because you're always
Yeah,
learning and refining and improving sort of like the experience for your students. And feedback, you've got to get some feedback, haven't you? You've got to run a course, and then you've got to ask for feedback, and that feedback
yeah.
is so valuable. I want to ask you this. I know it's slightly different because you are Yoga Alliance professionals registered, like I am, and we've got our courses accredited for Yoga Alliance professionals, but you're also Yoga Alliance, and I
Mm.
understand there's a slight difference, but the manual, right, is often a very big sticking point for people, because it can seem like quite a big document to create before delivering the course. Did you, if you can remember, did you deliver the course and create the manual as you went along, or did you have the manual and then deliver the course? That's a tough question for you.
The teacher training manual.
Yeah, with your can you remember with your teen yoga? Did you have the manual?
No, I made the manuals before I did, because the
Right,
manuals went out to the students, so they had the
right,
training manuals before the course. So I would always write the training manual
right. What about
first.
with your
Yeah.
what about with the foundation one? Because I think Yoga Alliance asks you, don't they, for the manual to be in advance. Yoga Alliance professionals, I don't
I
think.
don't know if I can't remember, but I
No.
wrote the manual before the course started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I, I
I
I like, oh, confession here. I did actually, with my short course, I did the same as you. I did my first course was my pregnancy yoga teacher training course, 5 days. And absolutely, I did the manual for that in advance, and it was ready on day one. But I remember, let's get on to the topic of the biggie, the foundation teacher training course, whether it's 200, 300,
mm,
500 hours. I remember I had the intention to write the manual in advance, whether it was procrastination, but when it came to it, I was like, actually, I don't think I can, because I I almost, it felt such a big undertaking, although I had like a map of what was going to happen over the 8 months of the course and the curriculum and the content. The thought of creating the manual, I was like, I'm going to go weekend at a time. Did you create your foundation? Did you do it in advance?
I finished writing the manual with a newborn baby.
Oh my God, Natalie.
So I
Well done.
started. I started the teacher training when she was 8 weeks old, was the first
Oh
weekend.
God, I remember this. Yes.
Yeah. And so I was writing the training manual with my daughter, like breastfeeding my daughter. And then when she slept, when most new mothers of newborn babies nap, I wrote the training manual.
It's like
So I didn't nap at all. And that sums up the last 5 years, really, and why we're where we are right now. Quite well.
but I mean, yeah, it's such a massive undertaking, isn't it? And
Yeah.
we'll all, I'm glad, and again, I'm glad you and I have done it differently, so you can hear there is also no one set way of doing it.
I mean,
It will feel like, no, go on.
doing it module by module is quite a good idea, and I know some courses do that, or weekend by weekend, or however you want to do it. I just kind of tend to try. I mean, I did like the PowerPoint for the first course weekend, like as I went along,
Yeah.
quite like a lot of that.
Mm.
Now I don't, because it's all the content is
Yeah.
there, but I wrote the lesson plans and the schedule beforehand. But I don't think it even crossed my mind to not do it all in one go. So they had, their manual, their big book, and that was it.
What will
But
there be a different? What's your
the
star sign? What's your star sign? I'm just trying to think. There's a definite difference.
Aries.
Aries. Okay, so I mean, I'm Libra, but I'm Gemini moon. I'm a bit of a last minute wonder. But the other thing that I get is if I over plan too much in advance, by the time it comes to deliver it, I've kind of forgotten what I've done. So I benefit from things being a little last minute, but I do remember the manual for the foundation teacher training course. I remember feeling like once I completed it, I feel like I'd done a degree. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a
That
lot.
level of work.
But every time you write a course, I think it feels like that, because even though you're writing what you know, you still have to go and do more research to add to what you know. So you're constantly learning. So I find even running the teacher training course, I've probably learned more about yoga in the last 5-6 years of running the training courses than when I did my training course.
Yeah.
Because I've consciously gone out there to learn to get the information that, like, fill in the gaps almost. And obviously I then bring other people on the course who are experts in areas that I'm not. But yeah, I definitely think you can know as much as you know when you go to teach a course, but you'll probably find you're going to go out there and try and learn even more, because your students will come at you with questions. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think actually one of my personal, I mean, let's talk about this mindset of being a trainer. I remember, like you, I got my shorter course and I felt that was okay. Like, 5 days pregnancy yoga. I've been teaching pregnancy yoga for 6 years. I felt very, very confident with that. And then I had people saying, are you going to run a yoga teacher training course? And I would, like, for a couple of years, my stock response was, I don't know enough. I don't know enough. And actually, when you think about the vast topic that is yoga, you can never know enough, right? And a trainer that is honest about that, to their students, if they come at them with a question, like this happens to me even now, like they'll come at me with a question and perhaps it's something that the glaciers and I'd be like, do you know what, give me a moment, I need to go. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you do have to say, I'll have to go and look that up. Like sometimes I forget like the Sanskrit terms, because like I do use Sanskrit, but actually not that often. Like I've evolved into thinking, like, in terms of language, if you're using Sanskrit and it's enhancing the teaching in terms of your use of language, go for it. And I appreciate there's some styles of yoga like Ashtanga yoga where the Sanskrit is part of the chant, but if the Sanskrit's getting in the way of you teaching movement and shape and asana, then don't do it. So the other day in my training course, I completely forgot the name of a Sanskrit pose. And I was like, I'm gonna have to get back to you on this one. And then when I found it, I was like, God, there's a reason why I don't use the Sanskrit for this. And it's like so much easier to say the you know what I mean? Because like, do we ever say Adho Mukha Shavasana? No, we say down dog because it's so much easier. But then Trikonasana sounds nice. This is my point about Sanskrit. Like, as yoga teachers, we'll like use the Sanskrit that serves us. So anyway, sometimes when you're training, something comes up and you've either forgotten or you need to go and look it up, and you can't know everything as a trainer. But one of the biggest things that stop us as a trainer is thinking we need to know everyone and need to know everything. And then you heard Natalie talk about bringing people in, and that I think that's, I mean, I actually co-teach my foundation teacher training course, but you do it largely by yourself, but you do bring in visiting teachers. And I think
so I run the course on my own, but they like, you do the a little bit on pregnancy. I've got Chris, who teaches a lot of the anatomy, Jamba does the Mashtanga, Rachel came and did a bit on Ayurveda this year. Got someone coming in to do a kirtan session. So there's always people that come in and out. And I think yoga is such a huge topic that it's impossible. Some people might be experts at all of it. They might, but I find for me, it's impossible for me to be an expert.
I'm yet to meet someone who is.
In every single aspect of yoga. So it's really helpful to seek out the other people who complement what your skills are, and what my skills are as a trainer, or as a yoga teacher, are going to be different to another course. And that's where I think as well, like, almost like there's not that competition, because every teacher is different, every training course is going to be different, and someone who kind of is on the same wavelength as me or interested in similar things is probably going to be drawn to my course, whereas someone whose real focus is something different might be drawn to a different teacher's course, who that's their kind of their subject, that's their area of yoga that they're really into. But because it's such a big subject, that's why it's hard to standardize it, because how can you standardize things like meditation? And
you can't I don't want it to be regulated. I couldn't think of anything worse. I just think it's good that as trainers we're starting to have these conversations about actually the role of a trainer, how that is a skill, and how we can ensure that we're delivering a training course, whatever the subject, we're delivering a training course that ensures the outcome, which is whoever's come onto our course is leaving feeling that they've got enough subject knowledge and confidence to go and teach, whether it's teen, chair, pregnancy. And the bottom line with a foundation teacher training course, regardless of the curriculum, like my curriculum, if we compared our curriculums, we'll have different content, right? Because there is no way that a foundation teacher training course is going to be able to teach you everything, and I definitely over the years have chucked stuff out, brought stuff in, it's because it's such a big topic. It is like that general introduction into yoga. Now, also picking up from what you were just saying about we've all got different experiences, different backgrounds, different interests, different skills, so our courses will all be different, which is why there's a room for us all. The other thing, Natalie, is we deliver them differently. So tell me, and I know COVID, like, let's just pre-COVID, you and I were in-person training courses. We didn't even know about this online world. But how do you deliver your courses now? Tell us about your specialist courses, your foundation course.
So the further training courses, the specialist courses, are predominantly online now. I've got self-paced options that you go through at your own pace, and then you get support from me, and you have to submit assignments. So that's for people who are already yoga teachers. I do sometimes offer them live online. I'm potentially going to offer something over the summer in person, but I haven't done since COVID, partly because people quite, being online opens it up to more people. But I think it's a balancing act. Some people really like being in the studio. Some people like the flexibility of just opening their laptop and getting on with it. And when it's a 2 or 3 day course, it's quite, it's quite different. And then even if the course is delivered live on Zoom, or even if it's delivered in person, I still have the online area with resources for people to access. So they don't lose, you don't lose that, and it means that if you've done a course, you can go home, or even if you've done it online live,
Yeah.
you can then go home and go back through the resources after the course. And that's a huge benefit, I think, to how we were doing it before, when we didn't have any of the pre-recorded content or the online content. You just had a training manual and then some handouts, and you had to sit there scribbling notes,
You
which
make
was also
furious notes. Yeah.
but then
I've
you
got
never
books
go back
above
over
me.
them.
No, I've got literally just above me here is a shelf full of like books, where notepads, where I've been on training courses, written furious
Yeah.
notes, and I rarely go back in and look at them. You know,
Yeah.
but you are right. I feel like COVID did us a massive favor as trainers, didn't it? We both use a teachable platform. We
Yeah.
both have. I copied your wording actually. Natalie has a teacher portal. I have a teacher portal because I copied Natalie's teacher portal word. I was like, that's such a good word.
So I've got a yoga library which I copied off of you.
That's fine. That's fine. And that's the biggest form of flattery when someone copies you. Yeah. So it just actually, for me, I think maybe you obviously really enjoy writing a manual. I've always found like the written word, the whole manual thing, quite a challenge for me now with my training courses. I'm like, it's an e-manual, it's an online resource. Like I'm actually not printing stuff off as part of my training courses. And that whole, I mean, we woke up, didn't we? COVID woke us up to the potential of online learning, the flexibility of online learning. But
so
I was going to say, you and I both know, because of our educational backgrounds, our experience, there isn't an educational model one size fits all. That some people some people need to be in person, some people need to be live, some people are much better in a self-paced environment. And as a trainer, you've just got to claim also what works for you. Because I remember in those early days of COVID, the argy-bargy that we had in the yoga teaching world about, can you run yoga teacher training courses online? Should you run yoga teacher training courses online? And then prior to that, there was the argy-bargy on how many hours should your foundation teacher training course be? And that, you know, the intensive 3-4 week, you know, you can go off to Bali and do this, right? And how bad that is. And I'm like, everyone stop. That there is a course for everyone.
Yeah. So in comparison, so my teacher training now is the foundation teacher training is in person, and I have an online option. Both of those courses use the same online platform for their like portal, and so there's a different one for each course, but it's got all the same information. It's got some pre-recorded videos and handouts and PowerPoints, you know, resources for people to touch base with. And then people also have access to the online class library, so they can do yoga classes throughout. They don't have to be coming to my studio or class, you know, local classes. So the online area has really supported the teacher training course, even when it's in person or when it's live on Zoom. They still have this online area they can go away and access. But I did I'm also a qualified personal trainer, and I did my personal training online across, it was self-paced. So similar model to our self-paced online training courses with pre-recorded videos and texts and quizzes and assignments, and then some in-person assessment days. So that's been going on for years, you know, in that context. Like, so for the yoga world to not think that's good enough, I mean, it's different, but it works for so many people. And for me, that self-paced learning has always worked better for me. A bit of interaction, but I think I quite like going at it at my own pace. So
ditto. I mean, I think there's like right, let's take my pregnancy online teacher training course, right? That was an in-person 5-day course. When I moved it over to the model that I run now online, which is those self-paced training videos with, you know, a monthly live Q&A, support from me, my outcomes are better. people are taking in the information better. People are able to go back and revisit stuff. People are able to ask me a question more easily once they get teaching. Like, the outcomes are better. So as a trainer, I'm like, I'm not going back. I'm not saying that model doesn't work, but for me, it works better. And I think there is sometimes, you can see it in certain posts on certain Facebook groups, that almost like it's a closed mindset where you see someone saying, should I go and train? Let's take the one that probably gets the worst reputation, which is that intensive 3 or 4 week teacher training course. Like, people can be so negative about that, and I'm like, hang on, how do you know, first of all, that whether that course is right or wrong? Like, as a trainer, for me, 4 weeks intensive, I couldn't deliver it like that. It wouldn't work for me. But I know people who've gone out there and done that course. It's worked for them. It's given them a starting point. And let's be honest, you never stop training as a yoga teacher as well. So it might give someone a starting point, a grounding that then they go on for. And I'm just like, can we get to a place in the industry where we understand that this unregulation means that there are lots of options, and all options are valid for the right person? And as a trainer, when we're thinking about how we might deliver our training course, that we think what's going to work for us, and then we go out and try it. And then if you are an established trainer, that you work really hard on your mindset around other training courses that are doing differently to you. Because I think when you see someone doing something differently to you, you think there's that moment of, is it better? Is it better than mine? And actually you come from a place of, there's room for us all. And just because it's different, it doesn't mean it's better or worse. We're just in our own lane. We're in our own lane as a yoga teacher, we're in our own lane as a trainer. So Natalie, this is a tough question as we're coming to an end here. So I'll set the scene. I've been teaching for about 7-8 years, and I'm thinking of running a training course. I'm thinking about expanding out in terms of my business, my income, because it's a higher ticket offer. What's your 3 top pieces of advice to me? It's a really tough question.
It is. Even though you've just said about other people, looking at other people, I would still say research.
Yes.
And look at what other people do to get an idea of what actually does work, what people want. So, you know, do your market research, basically. In terms of looking at what other people are doing, and also what students want. And probably do some kind of training in education to some extent, if you don't have any kind of experience in that. Understand learning styles, you know, how to put together you know, proper presentations, lesson plans, how to schedule a training course so that the learning evolves, like you know, it's layered, and people are building on their learning and understanding, and it's not just jumping from one topic to another and another. And you know, that's where I think learning becomes a bit easier, when it's kind of the pace of it and is considered. And then the other one is probably have a bit of confidence in yourself, and a bit like you said, just kind of do it. Like, if it's something you really want to do, even if you, like we did, you dip your toes in and you do a shorter thing, or you know, you start small. It doesn't have to. I mean, I know with my first training course, I thought I was quite happy to have only 6 people. I filled it, you know, I had 12 in the end, but I would have been happy with 6. It was just I just was thinking of getting started with it.
I had 5 on my first pre-pregnancy course. I had 5. Second time I ran it, I had 14. You know,
so just because you don't necessarily set yourself that goal that I'm going to run my first training and I'm going to fill it, and you know, because it's a lot of, like, initially you're learning as well. So maybe price it accordingly, maybe try out with a few of people, you know, like get feedback before you maybe put it out there, like the higher offer.
I hope you guys all right. I'm making notes, right, by the way, because this is gold dust information. Like, there's so much coming out here. Like, Natalie's just recommended, like, almost like what we would call in on the online world, a beta course. You test it, you test the water, maybe at a slightly cheaper price. You're completely honest. This is the first time I've run the course. I did this in my mentorship program. I offered it at a very low price to those already in my community. So you're selling already to people out there. You're not trying to grow your audience. Totally upfront. First time I'm running the course, come in at this price, and that you use that group of people to test the water, to formulate the course. You use their feedback, and then at that point, this is whether it's an online or in-person course, you then put it out there as, here's my course, and at that, you know, the established price.
And I think then maybe you have more confidence as well in what you're offering or selling or whatever, you know, that actually you do feel confident that you can offer it for that price, or, you know, you can deliver. And so that, I think that helps. Like,
I mean, I think definitely with the short courses, I just think you almost want to start with those shorter specialist further courses. And then with foundation teacher training, because it is such a big undertaking, like, I think I definitely just put it out there at a full price. But like you, I tested the water. You're also talking about the mindset that this is basically what I talk about a lot, which is compassionate expansion. If you're stepping into the role of a trainer, you are actually expanding your business. You're going out of your comfort zone. You have to, at that point, you're going to have to just feel a bit of fear and do it anyway, but you need to do it compassionately. So find ways of doing it that, you know, you're not putting pressure on yourself. You're not saying I've got to get 15 people. You're okay with it running as a test run and see how it goes. And then going back to that first point, you're doing your market research, look at what works. I want to touch on that, because what people will do is they'll go out there. I'm going to take the example. I've got an online yin teacher training course, and I could easily Google online yin teacher training course, and I could find hundreds and hundreds of examples of online yin teacher training courses, right? Online, I Google it, and I could then go, oh, well, I can't. Why would I run a yin teacher training course? Because there's already so many out there. And I'm like, that's just a sign, you know, that there's a need for it, you know, and there's room for us all. And then I, of course, look at how people run it, how they structure it, how they price it, and then price accordingly. And then, oh, right, now I'm just looking at my notes, because I knew we could just get sidetracked and talk about stuff. Do you know what? This isn't on my notes, but it came to me, like, without going on a massive tangent, Natalie, accreditation. I reckon there's some people listening right now thinking, do I need accreditation? So I am a Yoga Alliance Professionals registered teacher. My courses are accredited by Yoga Alliance Professionals. Natalie is both Yoga Alliance and Yoga Alliance Professionals, and have accreditations with both. Am I right, sweetheart?
Yeah.
And there are other places that you can get accreditation from. I think, like, there's natural complementary therapies is another place. I mean, like the Independent Yoga Network, that was another place, but that no longer exists, does it? And if you're a British yoga teacher, I think there's options for being accredited through British Will. But, you know, our options in terms of accreditation are relatively limited. And it is an unregulated industry. So actually, you don't necessarily need accreditation. But both you and I would probably say get it accredited. Would you agree?
I think the term is registered, not accredited, because they're not actually governing bodies. So the course is registered with those organisations, and they're listed as, it's like advertising. It does give some confidence to people coming on the course that they've got a little stamp. Whether or not it actually makes that much difference, I don't, you know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, there could be another course with a teacher who's not paid that money and it's just as good.
Yeah.
But I think maybe it gives people a bit of confidence. They do give you a bit of guidance. Both organisations give you guidance as to what to include on the training, which is helpful. And they do offer some kind of support when you're going out there and you know, and marketing and selling. And there's ways, like with Yoga Alliance Professionals, to kind of try and boost what you're offering. So there is there is a benefit. It is all quite expensive, and I think it maybe feels like a big outlay if you haven't even got anyone on your course. But I think, I don't know, you know, there are definitely people out there that would say, no, don't bother, it's a waste of time. I think I just tend to be a bit cautious, so I think, well, maybe it's a waste of time, I don't know, but it might help. So
I know it's
I'll do it anyway.
I feel like come back another day and we can talk about this, because like I'm just nodding and agreeing with everything you're saying. Like ultimately, like like I often will pick a training course. I'm not interested in accreditation at all. I just want to go and work with that teacher. And ultimately, I think the majority of our students, whether it's foundation, specialist, are driven that way. But like if you
just put themselves on this pedestal, like Yoga Alliance professionals, is like they are the governing bodies, but they're not. And they are these kind of, you know, white gatekeepers of the yoga practice, which is doesn't quite sit for a lot of people, quite, you know, maybe quite rightly. So there's a whole and other conversation around all of that. And you know, maybe should we be giving them money? Should we not? I don't know. It becomes like a real political thing as well. And it's really difficult to
disentangle
work
yourself
out
from it.
What's the best thing to do? But I think there's benefits to being a member of something and having some kind of stamp. I think for a lot of people, they feel more comfortable with that. But
and ultimately we can give them the advice, don't they? Like, let's take our foundation teacher training graduates. They have a choice, don't they, at the end of the training course, that they can join Yoga Alliance Professionals as a member, have their yoga teacher listing, have their Yoga Alliance Professionals badge on their website, and they will get insurance with that. Or for a lot less money, they can choose to just go out, take their certificate that we issue them, and get insurance from somewhere else, get teaching. And you know, I'm sure if we look really hard, we could potentially find some yoga teachers out there that haven't done any training, you know, because like ultimately it is regulated. And these weekend courses exist, and we could rant. I feel like you and I and probably many other yoga teachers could rant for ages about whether these organizations should exist, etc., etc. And I think maybe we could be a bit more, I don't know, positive. Like, it's there's some benefits, but it is not necessarily needed. So if it's needed for you, until you feel secure and you benefit from being attached to that organization, and you want the badge. Some people want the badge. You want the badge. Great. If you're like, you're okay with it, like you don't need it, then don't use it. But it's like, this is part of navigating an unregulated system, and the option, a regulated system, like, get me out of there. I got out of secondary education because I did not want to be regulated by Ofsted anymore. So do not send me into a regulated system. Do you know, I think that when we get angry about it, we've got to think what the alternative is. And actually yoga is unregulated. Yoga is self-regulating, because if we are in our true authentic self, sharing our skills, our knowledge, then it just flows. If there is a trainer out there not doing it from that place, not offering a course that is, you know, got the outcomes that people want, then do you know what, they ain't gonna last very long. Because we often build our reputation word of mouth as trainers. Like, you know, that's the other thing we haven't spoken about today. But, you know, the reason why you might find it at first, you fill a training course with just a few, and then it grows, because reputation grows, experience grows, feedback from your students grow. Like, one of the things you must do, full stop, guys, at any stage of your business, is get testimonials from your students. Like, go on to Natalie, I'm sharing Natalie's social media, it's full of lovely video testimonials from her students. Like, if she wasn't getting them because her training was rubbish, you know, she'd struggle to sell her courses. She'd struggle to fill her courses. So before we go, Natalie, we have to discuss this. April, you can train online with Natalie. Is this right? So you've got a foundation teacher training course. She's laughing. We are plugging this, Natalie. We are going to talk about this. You've got an online weekday. You tell us about it.
So it starts at kind of mid-end of April, and it's on a Tuesday between 9 and 3, so school hours, term time only. So there'll be a bit of touching base in the summer holidays, but just to check in really. So and it uses the online platform that we've talked about, but all the training sessions are on Zoom. They're all recorded as well, so it's easy to catch up. It's a small group. It's always nice and friendly, and I do also offer scholarships for the course, which are just take a percentage off the cost for people who are kind of working in the voluntary and community sector, in healthcare, and who that's an area where I did a lot of work within over the years, and I'm really passionate about yoga being in places outside of the yoga studio. So that's
complete confession here. I absolutely copied I think I've copied your copy when it comes to the scholarship. I saw you do that a few years ago, and I'm like, yes, like topic for another day, but how can we make yoga more inclusive for all graphics?
So the scholarship's also for people who are not usually represented within the yoga world, but they I've got that emphasis as much as possible on the kind of voluntary health and community sector, because I think that's an area that it's so important to have, or it's so beneficial to have yoga.
And Natalie, honestly, I have to say massive thank you to this, because my last course I had a lovely lady called Loretta who Afro-Caribbean background, plus size, now is trained teaching chair yoga. My current course, I've got a lady who set up a community interest company targeting areas of deprivation in Cornwall, getting yoga out to there. And I'm like, your scholarship idea has brought those people onto my training courses, and I just like, right, thank you.
It's a really lovely idea, and it some people think that I'm going to offer the course for free. I obviously can't do that.
No.
And the course has payment plans as well, so you can pay monthly. So I'm trying as much as I can to make it affordable. And this is, one of the benefits of the course, being able to deliver the course online as an option, that it does make it a bit more affordable, because you're not paying for a venue. There's not really a certain number that you have to go over in order to make it financially viable. Like you can have lower numbers, or I feel like I can, so I can make it more financially affordable for people, which means people who wouldn't necessarily be able to access it, or can't travel, or feel anxious about going into a studio space, they can still access the training. So the online trainings aren't always about the teacher being lazy, or giving a less good option. It's, for a lot of people, it's a really positive option, because it makes it accessible to them. So that's the main reason, I think, why
let's be
tried
honest,
to carry on with it.
You'll welcome everyone into this daytime weekday course, but let's be honest, if you think about how Natalie's structuring that course, I imagine your ideal client is that person, probably a woman at home, children have gone to school, and she wants to do something for herself. She wants to train in something for herself. I've actually got a lady on my training course now who's, again, like, children have started school. She struggled to go back into employment because of maternity leave and time off from work from children, and she's like, I'm just going to follow my passion, train to be a yoga teacher. I'm like, and I'm going to help you set up your business, and like, a bit like that. Screw it. But that's the power. And she's on a scholarship as well. That's the power that scholarship place has, or stepping into that place of, I'm going to run my course this way, because it's not the traditional model of a weekend course. Really, there's nothing wrong with this, like, fancy yoga studio. I do that, but to do it differently is to open the door to possibility to other people. And absolutely, the more we talk about this stuff, the more, like, we'll all just be a little bit more accepting of us all doing it in our way. So I will put the link to Natalie's daytime online teacher training course that is starting in April, and I will ask all of you, my lovely listeners, that you're probably all yoga teachers. I'm just going to ask you to share it with anyone you know. My favorite mantra when it comes to training, anyone who would be blessed to train with Natalie, which I know that's lots of people. Natalie, thank you so much for joining me. The one reason why I picked, there are lots of reasons why I picked this topic, but the other reason is my April masterclass is going to be about becoming a trainer, because I think at the moment, yoga industry wise, this discussion is lacking, and you and me have started a discussion. So I feel like we're leading the revolution on this. So then you can come back and we'll have a good old discussion. God, it'll be a heated one, won't it? Good old discussion about accreditation. I think I might need to think we might need to have a drink before that one. All right, my lovely, thank you so much, and everyone, I will see you next week.